What's up, everybody? I'm Reverend Nia.
I'm Minister Wallace.
My name is Reverend Tiff, and welcome to Millennial Conversations.
Millennial Conversations is a Bible study specifically for young adults where we teach through dialogue and have candid conversations from an emerging generation of leaders.
Be sure to repost and share with the hashtag RTMC. That means Read Temple Millennial Conversations. And don't forget to engage with us in the chat.
You can tune in to our Read Temple website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel every Thursday at 7 p.m. So grab your pens.
Grab your notebooks.
And join us for tonight's rap session.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Millennial Conversations. Guess what, y'all? Today we turn 1. That's right. The first Thursday in February of 2021 is when we kicked off Millennial Conversations, and tonight is our 1-year anniversary, and we are so excited about this jump start to a new year, new content, new faces, new everything. And right now, and for the time being, we are on this new platform, and we are certainly grateful to God for all that He has done and allowed us to do through Millennial Conversations in these last 12 months. For the next 2 weeks, we will be discussing and teaching and learning and growing under the heading Millennial Marriage. Oftentimes in this particular demographic, we use the hashtag relationship goals. And so hopefully by the time we finish these 2 weeks, we will think a little differently about using that hashtag. Just keeping in mind the fact that every relationship is different. Every marriage is different. There is no blueprint for relationships or for marriage. And it's always best to just fashion yourselves and your relationships after what God has for your marriage, your relationships. And so with that, our first guests are the Cheeks. Antoine and Alicia Cheek, would you come on and introduce yourselves at this time?
Hi, yes, we are Antoine and Alicia Cheek, and we have been together, started dating in 2005. So we are high school sweethearts, and we got married in 2014. And we also have a child. We have a 5-year-old son, Desmond.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Listen, guys, if you're tuning in, make sure you share, repost, use the hashtag RTMC. That stands for Read Temple Millennial Conversations. We will start off with our couple actually giving us the scripture for which they fashioned their marriage.
So the scripture that we have is Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. I'm reading from, I believe this is the NIV. Yes, it is. And it reads as thus: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. That was Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12.
Awesome. So Antoine, let's kick it to you first. What about this scripture speaks to you the most as it relates to your marriage?
So I think it's important in marriage and in any relationship to understand that, number one, you have to be intentional about the other person that's involved in the relationship, and it's not just about you. But it's also understanding that, a relationship, a marriage is a partnership, and your partner is there and should always be there to help you get on your feet, to help keep track of you, to help keep you responsible. So for me, what's really important, what I love about our marriage is that Alicia is my responsibility partner. It doesn't matter what it's with, whether it's with work, schoolwork, parenting, chores, whatever it is. I can trust, know, and believe that Alicia is always going to be there, not only to hold me accountable, but also to help me, because I'm a person who, I happen to be a little bit proud, and I happen to not always want and need and ask for help, especially in times when I need it. And she's always been there to sort of help me with that and sort of help me with my own personal shortcomings. And she's made me a significantly better person through that partnership.
That's awesome. Alicia, what about you? What about this scripture speaks to you the most as it relates to your marriage?
So this scripture isn't really even, it wasn't written about marriage specifically. It was just about relationships with other people. But what I like about this scripture and the way it speaks to me as far as what my marriage is concerned is just that, there are two of us and we are stronger as a team than either one of us would be separately. Could we do things on our own? Absolutely. But we are stronger as a team. So it really just, for me, kind of fortifies that like team aspect of marriage. Like Antoine said, we are a partnership. So the two of us are partners in this thing. When I am weak, there he is, and so on and so forth. And it's that last verse there talked about the 3-strand cord. So that is myself, my husband, and God. So the three of us together, we cannot be broken.
That's wonderful. So how do you incorporate the scripture into your daily lives as a married couple from Sunday to Sunday? And what ways do you actually incorporate this scripture into your relationship?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
So like I said, the theme here is a partnership. And I feel like a lot of married couples don't fully understand what the word partnership means. We say that we are partners, but we don't fully know what partnership means. And that's why you hear a lot of women complain that they have to take on all of the housework. They're doing all the cleaning when it comes time for them for their child to need their butt wiped. Like they're the one doing it. They do all the work, and that the husband's kind of sitting there on the couch. That is not how things work in our house. We are a partnership. And it's not just about when I am weak. I don't need to become weak for my husband to step in. Oh, hey, now all of a sudden I'm going to come. No, we are a partnership. This is my job tonight, and this is your job tonight. So we are partners in this thing. So the two of us at the end of the night should be equally tired and not one person is like overwhelmed and the other person's like, yeah, I was just sitting here, just sipping water, just hanging out, whatever. Like that we truly understand that day in and day out, this thing is about the two of us being a partnership, and that, like I said, we are stronger together.
Yeah, and we've been married long enough that it's second nature to us now to sort of adapt to whatever needs of the family have to get taken care of. But the difficulty with a lot of newly married couples, with a lot of young couples, is that adaptation doesn't come naturally. And a lot of times, just because communication is a weak point in a lot of relationships, they're not either able, or they don't even have the basic knowledge to know that, hey, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask your spouse or significant other, whoever you're in a relationship with, your friends even, for help when you need it. Because if you don't, you will never get it. And then people who don't ask for help sometimes wind up being resentful and, well, why didn't they read my mind and know that this is what I needed? Because they can't read your mind. So early in our relationship, when we were much younger, we were able to ask these questions. Alicia was able to ask me, hey, can you take, when Desmond was a baby, hey, can you take care of Desmond today?
But I was going to say, I'm sorry to cut you off, that, like you said, with younger couples, that it's harder. We were not always like this. No. We were not always a partnership. No. So this is like in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. 3 or 4. Let's 3. Sure, but but I used to be that wife that's how I know her so well. I know her so well because I was her. Yeah. I took on everything, and he would say, do you need some help? Do you want some help? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm a strong, independent woman, and I don't need any help. And I want to watch the game. Sounds great. Which is like totally fine, right? But then that's not a partnership. And if what you are seeking is a true partnership, then you need to allow the other person to help you.
Good stuff. Now, I did hear you all say that you are a high school sweethearts, which means y'all been together for a while and probably younger, like in your early 20s. So did y'all have the conversation about traditional gender roles prior to getting married, and whether or not either of you ascribe to them?
That's a really good question.
We had a conversation about it. We had a conversation about the concept of traditional gender roles, in so much as, how does the head of household work? Like who has the final and ultimate say in a decision, which when you're young sounds really cool. And then as you get older, you realize, like, maybe that isn't such a typical thing that happens. Like maybe there's not one person who says, all right, well, this is what's going to happen. Because like really, we're I think kind of a traditional millennial family where we both have full-time jobs. We're both well educated. It's not like one person is demonstratively better than the other. So when we come to decisions now, it's almost always a joint decision. And or if it's something where where you can't find that compromise, where you're not going to find that middle ground, then we make a point to make sure that we've given the information that we need, and even if we don't necessarily agree on the end, we can understand the thought process of the other person, and we're okay with it. So I mean, we had the conversation, but I think for us, it's never been something that's been etched in stone about well, she's going to be the homemaker and I'm going to be the guy. It's never.
But I will say that, like, in a marriage and in any partnership, you have strengths and weaknesses. So, like, for example, I don't know a thing about this car.
Sure don't.
Okay. But my husband used to work with cars. So he tells me what I need to know about the car and I can go and get it done. That's just not my thing. So like in that regard, there are some like more traditional, like gender specific things that people typically talk about like that. But we both cook. So, it's not like he just wiped the counters down right before we started recording. So no, we don't really subscribe to,
no, I mean, she takes the trash out sometimes. I don't know, like it's not. Yeah. I mean, for us, I think our focus is less on having that role be so well defined and more on understanding what our family needs and who potentially might be the best person to fit that need. I mean, the car example is great. Like I was a retail, I bought cars for a living for like a decade. So when she needs to go buy a car, it's not like we have a discussion. I'm just like, you're going to buy that one. Mm-hmm. And then that's the end of the discussion. We buy because I know more about cars than she does. If it's anything else, if it's anything related to medicine, science, technology, before I got my COVID shot, I was like, hey, this is cool, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, great, set it up. I'm going to get my shots. Like that's how we work. So for us, the idea of traditional gender roles is it's if it fits your relationship and that's what you want, love the idea of it. But for us, we had that conversation, and I think that we were both, very secure in our own selves and our own understanding of our person, that it wasn't something that we, needed.
Awesome. This is wonderful stuff. It sounds like you all, it's a wonderful balance you have. So it's much like you were saying before, Alicia, Dr. Alicia Cheek, actually, but it's much like you were saying before. It's not like, when I'm weak and this and the third. It's just knowing your areas of strengths and weaknesses, meaning I might not be as well versed in this subject matter than the other. And so you guys, in essence, balance one another out. So that's wonderful. That's good stuff. You said we can stick with the fact that y'all started out young. Why did you want to get married, Antoine? And before you answer, so oftentimes when it comes to our demographic, it comes to a question of, some people saying, well, I want to be married. Some people want the wedding and some people want the marriage. Some people want to make sure that they're married to somebody that they're connected to. Somebody that, is really for them. And then there are some who just say they want it just because they see that other people have it, which is why we're having this conversation about trying to maybe come off of this relationship goal thing, but cannot answer the fundamental question of why they want to get married. And so this is now I'm asking Antoine, why did you want to get married? And Alicia, you can answer the question when he's finished.
That's what you just said is so interesting to me. The concept of like wanting to get married because someone else is doing it. Why? All right. Anyway, so no, I come from a traditional family. I always wanted a family. I always wanted to be married to someone. I always wanted not just to be married, but I always wanted to have a wife and to have kids and to have a family and to have a house. And that very traditional, Cosby Show-esque, that's I joke about it, but I mean, that's kind of the idea. I grew up in an upper middle-class neighborhood in an upper middle-class family, and this is what the expectation was. And as I got older, and as our relationship grew, and like I said, Alicia and I met when we were 18, I guess, 17, 18, I don't know, something like that, super young. But as we grew older, not only was I madly in love with Alicia, but for me, there was not another person that I could think of who had the possible qualities of a mother and a spouse and a partner like Alicia. I mean, there's nobody even in the neighborhood. It's not even close to me. And so when I look at her, I calm down. So when I look at her, I have always seen someone, I'm like, she's going to be a fantastic mother, and she's going to be someone who's going to help pick me up when my fall, and she's going to be someone who's going to help make me better, make me a good father, make me a good husband. And I mean, there's nothing that was ever more important to me than right there.
That was a really good answer.
Wipe your tears, Alicia. Wipe your tears.
Okay, go ahead. No pressure. Go ahead.
No, so
married me for my looks.
Well, no, I can answer why I wanted to get married, and I can also answer why I wanted to get married to Antoine specifically. So why I wanted to get married, Antoine grew up in a household with, his mom and his dad. And my mom, she has been divorced a few times. So I knew what I didn't want. I knew that I didn't want like the feeling of like brokenness. And I believed in love. I was a big fan, honestly, of like romantic comedies and whatnot. Like I believed in love and I wanted love. And similar to Antoine, I wanted like the family and the house and all of that. So that was a big thing for me. I have always been a very independent person. So I didn't know what really a real partnership was till like 2 or 3 years ago. So I wasn't thinking like, I need someone to hold me up when I'm down. And I wasn't thinking about all that. I wanted the family, and I really believed in the power of love. The reason why what Antoine and I look like we said, we've been together for a very long time. Early on in our relationship, for no reason at all, Antoine would write me like letters and cards. He would include scriptures, and he was just like a friend. So I loved him as a friend, but I was also like, oh, okay, like this guy really seems like somebody who has his head on straight. He's obviously been raised right. Like similar to like what he said, if I were to pick anybody, it's kind of a no-brainer. Somebody who like loves and cherishes you like that. When I was in college, he would drive like 30, 40 minutes to pick me up just to drive me to school some days. So all of that like said something to me, like I'm very important to him, somebody who doesn't just say like, oh, you're important, oh, I love you, like they show it with their actions. And that is what Antoine is all about. He shows with his actions that he loves me and our son like every day.
That's pretty good.
You guys are adorable.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And so this all sounds wonderful and lovely, which is great, but let's talk a little bit candidly about what are some of the challenges of being married.
Well, like I said, it's only been the last couple of years that we've really had it together.
All of it?
If you talk to us, 2017, would have been different.
That was a rough year.
It would have been different.
Yeah, that was a rough year.
We actually, we did a round of like marriage therapy or counseling with a like licensed professional counselor.
Yes.
And then we did a round of marriage therapy with a LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist. So like we've been like in the trenches trying to get this thing right, and we're fine now. But communication was like a big thing.
Right.
And the 5 love languages, really understanding each other's love language, and the fact that like one of the things was I could buy him a gift, and I would think like he knows from me buying him that gift that I love him or whatever. For him, he's just like, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice, a gift, whatever. That says nothing to him. But me, I'm like, oh, see, he should know. And our love tanks were just so empty from us not speaking each other's love language. I like quality time. So if every night I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm gonna play video games. I'm like, oh,
okay, it wasn't every night, but it was like almost every night.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like,
I'm not lying.
So for me, quality time and words of affirmation, like Antoine didn't grow up. He grew up hearing a lot of words of affirmation, but he didn't grow up saying a lot of them. Like, I'm so proud of you. And that was a little uncomfortable for him to say, but I needed to hear those things. Like, now he'll just randomly tell me, you're a really good mom and you make sure that everything is together and I appreciate you. He'll say things like that now. So he understands that those are things that help fill up my love tank. We were just two very like empty people at one time. Just who happened to like be living with each other and married with each other.
Empty and prideful and just horrible at communicating.
Passive aggressive.
Horrible at communicating it. And like, what's funny about it is that if you ever met us separately, not together as a couple, just two separate people, right? We are both wildly expressive. We're both great with language. We both have a really big vocabulary. We're really good at talking. I've seen her in presentations. I sat through her dissertation. It's amazing, right? All the time. But like, we'd get together and we couldn't talk about basic things. Like, we couldn't have basic conversations because that's just not something that a lot of people, particularly in our age range, have been taught how to actually do. Like being able to sit down and have a really frank and honest conversation where you have to make a choice to be vulnerable and to lay yourself bare is really difficult, especially for the men out there. And don't act like you know who I'm talking to you. It's really difficult to get, to be sitting across from somebody who you might be upset with, who you might, you might not be feeling great about this person, and to say something really honest. Like the first time I said out loud, what you did or what you said hurt me, was like, oh, I was like pulling teeth. It was like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my life. And it changed her life too, because she had never heard me say it. And I had never expressed probably to anybody ever, like in my life, I had never made myself so vulnerable as to be like, hey, I'm not comfortable with what you did and how you did it. And here's why. And even when that happened, we still struggled with communication because I felt like she wasn't listening, and the pride thing. Right. And
because even sometimes he might say, oh, he might have said like, you hurt me. And I'm kind of like, oh, I don't really want to apologize right now. I don't know.
Right. What's so difficult, what's been so difficult to learn, and we got it now, but it's still a struggle to maintain it and to be consistent with it. This is somebody that I've chosen to spend the rest of my life with. And what kind of sense would it make for me to be closed off from that person? Like, what kind of sense would it make for my son to have a mother and father who aren't willing to talk to each other about like, that's ridiculous. Like, who am I doing? Who does this help? My pride? And then I do the rest of my life a disservice? That's crazy. Why would you do that? So like, communication is the biggest thing, because communication winds up being the root of all these other problems, all this other issues with stagnation, issues with romanticism, lack thereof, whatever it is. It's because you don't communicate. I cannot expect her to read my mind, and she can't expect that I can do that for her either. But if you can communicate to each other, and like I said, one of the biggest things, she said, we had to go to counseling for it, we had to go to therapy for it, and it helped. And
it's big things that, like, we all know there's like big things, like you shouldn't talk to me like that or whatever. It's also really little things that, like, now I understand that even those little things, if it's going to cause me resentment, if he's going to come home and when he puts his slipper in the wrong place, I'm like, always putting the slippers in the wrong, because that starts the cycle
all the time.
So that's what we were living in. We were living in this cycle of like, I am resentful. I'm not going to even tell you what is wrong. So now every little thing that you do is like picking, but you don't know that. So then when you come and you're just like, hey, do you want to have some more water or whatever? I explode all these emotions and everything, when I could have come to you at first and just been like, hey, you put your backpack on the table and I don't like backpacks on the table. Can you please move it? Like, it could have been done hours ago, but like he said, that pride and everything. So I mean, we were young people who didn't really have a good roadmap about marriage. We saw marriages, he saw it in his own house, but we didn't, you know, there was a lot we had to learn.
Yeah, I mean, we're both pretty we both can be pretty snarky people.
Yep. And like you said, the faces, like very expressive. So we both make faces.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Body language, like all the bad body language, Mark, we got them. It's hilarious. Like there is no straight face kept in this house. And and we spend so much time reading into those things. And I used to do it all the time. But like, instead of asking a question like, hey, how do you feel? I just be like, well, you're making a stink face, so you must be mad. Maybe it's not that. Like you really have to get out of this you really have to get out of this social media mindset, out of this idea, you know, this petty Pablo and petty LaBelle mindset of like, I'm down for me and I'm gonna say what I want and I'm gonna do it. Nah, you make a choice. When you get into a relationship with somebody, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whatever, you make a choice to be with that person in some capacity. You need to be willing and able to try to communicate, to try to make yourself known, to try to understand that other person. Because like I said, like it's not a solo act. Like you have to understand that there's another person with another set of feelings, another upbringing, somebody whose morals and goals or whatever might be completely separate from yours. And your experience, however much you have, might not relate. And if you can't ask the questions that you need to know, like if you can't figure that out, then you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah.
That definitely was certainly helpful for me, and I'm pretty sure for so many others who are viewing. As I ask our last question, Antoine, we'll kick it to you first. What is your advice to other millennials who desire to be married?
So the first thing that I always say is like, a desire to be married is cool. My desire is to be in a fulfilling relationship, and I don't necessarily mean a romantic one. My desire is to understand and care about and love another person intentionally. And then the second piece of advice that I give is, if at all possible, do pre-marriage counseling, do pre-marriage therapy, talk to somebody about it. And then and let me be clear, I don't mean your parents. I don't mean go and talk to mom and dad about it, because everyone's heard this saying, rose-colored glasses, right? Their perspective is based on their experience in their marriage. Y'all didn't grow up in the same time. Y'all didn't grow up in the same household. They have different, I mean, they grew up in a completely functional, different society. It's completely different from what you're going through. And while their perspective is nice to have, you need to speak to someone who doesn't have a vested interest in your relationship. Somebody, I'm not talking about your friends. I'm not talking about your mom, your dad, your cousin that's married. Talk to somebody. Go talk to your pastor. Go talk to your minister. Go talk to some of the deacons at your church. It's very likely that your church is going to have that sort of outreach ministry, that they're going to have that sort of counseling. Go speak to a secular counselor. Go speak to somebody about it, because being married, and I'm not talking about being actually married legally with the ring on and all that, it's a whole different ball of wax than everything else you've ever been through. If you've never done it before, it's a brand new experience, and it is a legitimately serious one. And so before you do that, it's like anything. Before you go buy a house, you go talk to a realtor, right? Before you go buy a car, you go talk to a salesperson, right? But before you get married, you just go get fitted for a tux. No, like this is a legitimate, serious, physical, spiritual, financial obligation, legal obligation that you're taking with somebody. Take time to talk it through with somebody. Take time to learn things about yourself that you didn't know. Take time to go to therapy individually by yourself, so that you can learn about these flaws, so that you don't wind up doing what we did, which is we got married blind and then wound up with like 4 years of consternation and sort of frustration, because it turns out that we're both really bad communicators.
Yeah. And like, it just reminds me of how when you are in a relationship with someone, the people around you are constantly like, when are y'all going to get married? You know, all day, every day, all the time. And it's like, yes, that is a goal. That is the goal here, but it's a lot of pressure that people will place on you to get married. And like he said, there are a lot of ducks you got to get in a row first before you consider marrying someone. There's actually a book that we went through. I think it's called 1001 Questions. Yeah. To ask before you get married, or something like that. So that was extremely helpful for us, because that book goes through like who will take out the trash and Like it asks everything from like finances to like the home stuff to how do we deal with our in-laws, and what are your thoughts on like, you know, if your mother-in-law wants to come stay, but I don't want her to, like, it goes through like a lot of the different scenarios that could possibly pop up. Kids, how many kids do you want? Do you want kids? Where can the kids sleep in our bed, or will they be sleeping in a crib? Like all that stuff. It goes through everything.
As much time as you're going to spend talking about your wedding, you better spend 10 times that amount of time talking about what being married is actually about. It's super cool to decide which napkins you want, but that's only going to last a night.
Yeah. And
you
then
got the rest of your life to worry about.
And like you said, you need to really talk to like a mental health professional, honestly, is really like the way to go. Because they're going to get into who you were as a child and what you saw as a child. That's going to inform what kind of a husband or wife you're going to be. Like you really need somebody who's going to get deep down into like, who's your mom and what was your mom like? Because I'm a lot like my mom. So they really want someone who's going to get deep down into like, what did you see growing up, and how is that informing like the person that you are today?
Yeah, and like I said, someone who doesn't have a vested interest, because like Alicia said, especially because we've been together forever, and as long as we've been together, people, a lot of pressure, right? They're not going to be there in your marriage.
Right.
I don't care how involved you think they're going to be. They're not.
They're at the wedding and they're not there.
It's not.
In the house.
It's not their marriage.
Yeah.
They don't sign the marriage. They don't. They're not involved. It's just the two of y'all.
Yep.
So when you speak to those people, if those are the people you're reaching out to, they have a vested interest in you getting married. They have some emotional investment in it. Find somebody who doesn't. Like you said, find somebody who's a spiritual advisor. Find somebody who is a mentor. Find somebody who is, a clinical therapist. Somebody who doesn't have that vested interest, who's, whose only interest in you is trying to make you the best person that you can be, and not someone who's clamoring for grandkids, or somebody who's clamoring because they haven't been to a wedding in a couple of years and they're really excited, or that's a very real thing that you have to deal with. Like, and you will hear it all the time. You'll probably hear it at your wedding that it's just between the two. Yes. And that's something that you have to address before you get married. Yeah. If you find out on your wedding night that all these people who are super happy for you and giving all these gifts aren't going to be there, and you're surprised by it, then it's too late. It's about the pre-work that you have to do. It's like anything else. You make a decision that big, you have to do the pre-work.
Absolutely. Guys, this has been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. You guys are a beautiful, amazing couple. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. Listen, if you are tuning in tonight and you don't know about the God we were talking about in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, right now is our opportunity to give you an invitation to get to know who this God is. And so if you are unsaved on tonight, you don't know what it means to be saved, you're unsure if you're saved, I want you to make a bold faith move tonight and type in the chat, "It's me." Maybe you're already saved but don't have a church home where you are growing, not just where you are going, for you can go to church and not grow in it at all. If that's you on tonight and you believe in church for your spiritual growth and development, won't you type in the chat, "It's me." Maybe you're already saved and already have a church home where you're growing, but you want to recommit or rededicate your life back to Christ. What does that mean? That means that somebody taught you about Jesus at one point in time or another in your life. You had a relationship with Jesus, but you started living your life like it was golden. You thought, you were big and bad enough to do it, and so you went and did it. But now you're saying, "God, I'm sorry. I've tried this thing called life independent of you, but now I want to live this thing called life depending upon you." If that's you on tonight and you want to recommit or rededicate your life back to Christ, won't you make a bold faith move and type in the chat, "It's me." Maybe you're still growing to that point of boldness in your faith, and aren't too comfortable with typing in "It's me" on the World Wide Web. That's perfectly fine. There's no condemnation, no problems, no issues. Won't you head on over to www.readtemple.org/cares, and someone will most certainly be in communication with you. Last and certainly not least, if you would like to sow a seed into the life of this ministry, not Millennial Conversations per se, but that of Reed Temple AME Church, so that we can continue to do the work of the Lord in the church as well as in the community, won't you drop a seed following the directions that are on your screen right now? And whatever, no matter how small, no matter how large, whatever amount the Lord places upon your heart, would you do so with a cheerful heart? Thank you so much to the Cheeks for joining us on tonight, our kickoff for February and our kickoff for our 1-year anniversary for Millennial Conversations. Join us next week as we continue under the heading Millennial Marriage for another Millennial Conversations.